Good morning everybody and welcome to space, home of a plethora of semi-intelligent species who all have one thing in common. None of them are me. Mr. Ambassador, quick question. This your planet? We are the Rocks of Rock Prime, a ravenous hive mind who sometimes have been known to eat planets. Our journey began right here. From this one system close to the eastern core of our galaxy, our empire would soon grow into a behemoth that would change this galaxy more profoundly than any other species to ever traverse these stars. But before that could happen, we had a lot of work to do. So we sent out our science ships, crashed huge rocks into planets to claim them as our own, and then naming them things like Ben-Shun and Pfloon. We did some research, built up the fleet, tested said fleet on some mining drones for science, found an ancient pirate treasure, and generally got things going. I'm not gonna lie, the first part of this game is usually my favorite. Things are pretty chill, nothing has gone to shit yet, and no one is trying to wipe you from the face of the galaxy. So I ate your friend's capital and everyone on it. So what? If he wanted to keep it, he should have stopped me, I'm just saying. But that usually doesn't last very long. 16 years later, and we had expanded the fleet quite heavily, and made first contact with another intergalactic civilization. To spearhead the talks, we had our top diplomat, Lan Shun Yevnap, on the case. A mere 7 years and one consumed world later, we had open communication with our mysterious neighbor, who as it turns out were also lithoids, which was a nice surprise. What wasn't a nice surprise, however, was the fact that they were a military junta and individuals. Whoa. You're not part of a hive mind, that's fucking cringe. So we built a military starbase next to their border and promptly ordered some more corvettes, because even though they were xenophiles, we were not. Having ramped up our military strength quite a bit, I was feeling pretty good. But before I started anything, I wanted to get my hands on the new destroyers I had lined up. So we chilled out some more, and then they declared war on me. I was quite surprised by this, but I was confident that we could beat them. So we sent in the boys, destroyed their first fleet, took some systems, and then got our asses handed to us by their second, much larger fleet. Gentlemen, we're in trouble. Our fleets were lost in space, and the only thing standing between our core worlds and a humiliating defeat was this station. A station that was half the strength our fleets were when they got their shit pushed in. We were in a very precarious situation indeed. There was a good chance that we would lose before we even really began. And it's gone. Turns out that they had neglected to repair their ships after our previous scrap, which turned out being a pretty bad move on their part. I knew we would beat them. There was never any doubt in my mind that we would beat them. Hell yeah. Having taken their capital and a few other systems, we decided it was time for some peace. Especially since we had encountered some more civilizations and I needed some time to relocate our new citizens. Our first war had been a great success. Our mineral and food stores were filling up nicely. Sure, the energy took a bit of a hit, but that was a temporary problem. Unlike the discovery of this ancient automated dreadnought on our border, that definitely was a permanent problem. At least for now. I don't want to be that guy, but having a skull as your fleet power can't be a good thing for me. So we marked the death system as a no-go zone and decided to ignore the problem for the rest of the game. It wasn't long after that we got contacted by the space equivalent of a door-to-door salesman, and we treated them as a door-to-door salesman. We also established communications with our southeastern neighbors, who happens to be fanatical pacifists. We started an archaeological dig, which in the end would turn out being some super advanced aliens settling their wars by sending robots to a moon instead of blowing each other up. It apparently worked out pretty well, until one side found out that the other one was cheating. I don't know what happened after that, but I'm guessing they didn't use the moon for whatever it was. I of course didn't know that was how it was gonna go down, but knowing that things rarely end happily in space, I immediately started the design of our largest ship thus far, the Stobkesh Cruiser. Armed with 4 laser batteries of varying size and some decent armor, this would make sure we would be safe from the raging pacifists on our border. Being a pacifist, they didn't put up much of a fight, but I'm sure they sent a strongly worded letter to the newly founded galactic community. Not that that helped them in any way whatsoever. So we took all of this, which included our capital and 4 other planets. A decision that drove our energy production into the ground. We had plenty of other resources to prop up our failing energy market, but it was nonetheless a pretty unfortunate situation. Another glorious victory for the Rock Boys. Now shut off the power, we are actually about to go fucking broke. Jesus Christ. During all of this, and a little bit earlier, we had started to dig up our precursor archaeological sites. Our precursors were Ashroni, an ancient civilization who had been so psychically powerful that they had for the most part left this reality to live in the Shroud. More on that later. During our fight with the pacifists, our neighbors to the east and north had started to become rather antsy. They consider us to be a threat to the entire galaxy and that we had to be put down. I naturally disagreed with this assessment of our nature and went to kick their fucking ass. What I hadn't counted on, however, was that our cowardly enemies would use the neutral rack-racks to attack from unexpected angles. And I didn't appreciate that. So for the first half of the war, we were on the back foot. Having only one really powerful fleet, we couldn't counter both enemies at once. So we had to endure some losses before we could eventually win. So after a lot of back and forth and several refused peace agreements later, we had cut the Great Rack-Rack regime into 4 separate petty kingdoms and gotten our hands on a bunch of new planets. We were stronger than ever, except for, you know, the huge problems we're about to have with our economy. But other than that, super strong. Whoa, so strong, much strong. Oh god, our economy is dying. My kingdom for some energy credits, please. So, instead of dealing with the problem myself, I decided it was a good idea to take all of our newly conquered planets together with all of their problems and handing them off to the AI to manage. Was this a good idea? I don't know, but I convinced myself that if I handed all of this off to the AI, it would probably sort itself out. Eventually. Most likely. Yeah, our economy was pretty much fucked for the coming decade, and if we weren't a hive mind, we probably would have returned to some sort of bartering system. Just saying. Anyway, the last war had made sure that none of our neighbors could challenge us ever again. We had become the superpower of the western part of the galaxy, and if we weren't hated before, we definitely were hated now. After having propped up our failing economy, watched some nanites transform my dead world into a Gaia world, rearmed my corvettes from cutting lasers to autocannons, effectively doubling their damage output, getting told that some alien species on the other side of the galaxy that I didn't know who the fuck they were suddenly become psychic, and someone else embracing cybernetics, we developed the next level of ship to join our grand armada. The battleship class Battleship. Armed with autocannons and plasma throwers, this baby would form the backbone of our expanding fleets. So, once again, having researched our brand new flagship for our fleets, I naturally felt a little bit eager to try them out. And having beaten everyone around me except for the guys to the north of us, we had a natural target. Because why test our new fancy shit on someone we can beat with our old, less fancy shit? But having made a few checks, we wouldn't be fighting 1, not 2, not even 3, but 6 different empires. So we decided to go and kick on the people who were already down, so to speak. Which was rather fitting since we found a strange dimensional portal on one of our planets that apparently leads to a dimension of suffering, and anyone studying it for more than a few minutes suffers from intense suicidal urges coupled with attempts to mutilate their sensory organs. Basically, we had found a place from Event Horizon, or the warp from 40K, whichever you prefer. Having experienced the horrors of the warp, our former peace-loving ways started to shift ever so slightly. So we mop up the remnants of the rack-racks, which didn't take much doing if I'm gonna be completely honest. The galactic community formed the Galactic Council, which is completely irrelevant to us. We found a planet that had been encased by some sort of energy shield. Things were looking pretty good. We were making a decent amount of resources each month. Our fleet were most likely the biggest in the galaxy at this point, not counting the fallen empires. But as always, things weren't going to stay calm for very long. The Genarians, our southern neighbors, were once again preparing for war, and knowing that they weren't brave enough to challenge me on their own, they would most likely bring some friends. So we decided that if they wanted a monster, they would get a monster. We became the crisis they said we were, and we beat them to the punch. We didn't just declare war on the Genarians, we were going to wipe them the fuck out. When I made this decision, what I didn't know was that instead of taking their space for our own, we would just destroy the station and fuck off, which wasn't really what I had in mind. But I guess I could have made a educated guess that existential expulsion means that there won't be much left behind when we're done. They tried to stop our advance, but they didn't stand much of a chance against our much bigger and way more experienced fleets. In the end, we had carved up their empire into several smaller ones once again, and gotten our hands on a bunch of planets that was about to get automated. All in all, we had once again defeated our enemies, expanded the swamp's borders, and fucked our economy for the foreseeable future. Things were as they should be. After that, we finished eating the capital world of our northern neighbors as an epic prank. Well, at least we solved the unemployment problem, I guess. We also reached the first tier of becoming the Crisis, which gave us a link to the realm beyond our own, the Shroud, which incidentally, and I didn't plan this whatsoever, put us on the same path as our precursors. But there was a small problem. Having finished the last site, we should have found their homeworld and gotten a relic. This did not happen. Well, at least I didn't think it happened. Looking around my empire, I didn't find any new systems, but it wasn't that it didn't exist, it was just way closer than I had expected. Eventually I would find it, but it didn't play much of a part of our story, other than being oddly foreshadowing somehow. What it didn't foreshadow, however, was us finding some sort of alien box, cracking it open, and injecting our species with some sort of gene modification medium. As an effect of the gene therapy, our people started stinking a little bit less, and as a result they used up 5% less housing. It probably helped somewhat, but I don't really know. Anyway, after that we designed our first menacing corvette, which we got from unlocking the first level of becoming the Crisis. They cost less, produce faster, and have more slots for things. Basically, they are pretty sick, and I would spam these out in their thousands for the rest of the game. Feeling pretty good about how things were progressing, I decided to check out the diplomacy map mode to see just how hated we were. And oh boy, it was pretty bad. Oh God, I don't think we're gonna win in a popularity contest anytime soon, fellas. The only ones who did not completely hate our guts were the space Mongols and the door-to-door salesmen. So I felt pretty justified in expanding our fleets once more and preparing for the inevitable. A galactic war. Basically, anyone I declare war upon now would be backed up by the majority of the rest, so even though we were stronger than any one faction, things could get a little spicy if they all combined their powers. We extended the fleet, built up our ground forces, and accidentally stepped on the grass when colonizing this Gaia world, angering the local gardener. Fuck, I'm sorry. And then we declared our war. With one single fleet at over 100,000 fleet power, I was confident, maybe a little too confident, especially since they brought roughly 130,000 and kicked our ass. Well shit, not a great start to the war, but this wasn't some pussy sprint, this was a marathon. So we hunkered down, bolstered our choke points, and started pumping out the ships. Having gathered another armada of roughly 170,000, we went back in. And then it died, and we did it again for about 24 years. Millions died, but in the end we wore down our enemies, and each victory was a step on our great journey to becoming one with the Shroud. In the year 2330, having conquered most of the eastern galaxy, we offered our foe peace just in time for our brain drones to have created the the engine and the Star Eaters, with which we would detonate stars in order to create dark matter so we can fuel the thing so we can make our way into the Shroud. This naturally didn't sit well with the rest of the galaxy, who apparently likes the stars for some reason, so they declared war on us once more. But unlike the previous wars, this one wouldn't stop until either they were dead or we left this galaxy behind, with them dead. So we started up the war machines once more, and thanks to the resources granted to us by our new engine, we could build a lot of things. Wanting to keep our empire as intact as possible, we decided that we would only use the Star Eaters on our enemies. This was extremely optimistic of me, because even though we were stronger than most of our enemies combined, we now ruled a truly massive empire. And despite our huge navy, we couldn't be everywhere at once. So after the first few years of detonating our enemies, we were being pushed back, and realizing that we couldn't push out anymore without risking enemy fleets entering our heartland, we fought a battling retreat. After the first 20 years or so of constant battling, we made a startling discovery. The Shroon system, the home system of our precursors, had been right next to our capital all along. And it's safe to say that I had been pretty much on autopilot for the last 30 to 40 years, but to miss it was nonetheless pretty bad. Fuck, it was right here all along! How did I miss it? God damn it! 16 years after that, and we were nearing the end. Our fleet power was over 2,000, and our ability to pump out fleets was unmatched by our enemies. And while our empire had shrunk drastically, our victory was all but assured. After one final big battle, the engine was activated, and every single star in the galaxy was detonated, and our ascension to godhood was complete. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. It took us 167 years and a lot of hate from the neighbors, but in the end we managed to fight off the entire galaxy, destroy it, and then flee into the warp. And with that, I'd like to thank you all so very much for watching this shitpost of a video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
All you young spacefarers, listen to me. I'll sing you a song of our fish from the sea. And it's windy weather, boys, stormy weather. When the wind blows, then we're all together. Boys, blow ye winds, French word, blow ye winds, blow. Out to the galaxy, steady she goes. Up comes the great dragon in search of our home. Through space to a place that's beneath waves and foam. And it's windy weather, boys, stormy weather. When the wind blows, then we're all together. Boys, blow ye winds, French word, blow ye winds, blow. Out to the galaxy, steady she goes. Come the solar winds taking us far, all through the space lanes and out to the stars. It's windy weather, boys, stormy weather.